Yeah, this is Heiner Segman of Cargo Forwarder Global speaking with Anne-Marie McCarthy of IATA Cargo Management. Anne-Marie, air freight is having a hard time. What can you recommend from IATA standpoint to the industry?
Well, we recognise that from a global perspective, the economy is bumping along the bottom. There isn't any major growth forecast from the cargo perspective, but now's the time to prepare for the future and to make sure that we are looking at the whole supply chain and focusing on the areas where we can introduce some process improvements and embrace the technology that's available. I mean, technology is becoming available at a rate of knots, but the supply chain hasn't changed much in the last 20 or 30 years. It's still very much the same. It's still very paper-driven, and there's an awful lot of processes around paper that ties up people's time and efforts.
Of course, you recommend getting rid of this paperwork and adapt to e-processes. Does the industry listen to you? Can you sort of convince them to change their habits?
Well, the airlines have introduced the e-arable, which is the one document of the over 22 documents that are handled over 42 times within the whole supply chain. And the airlines have only got control to a large extent on the e-arable. So they've introduced that with varying degrees of success over the last number of years. But they can't actually change the processes around handling paperwork until all of those other pieces of paper are converted to digital messages, because you can't take the people away from the desks to accept paperwork, and you can't take the processes around handling the paperwork away until all of the documents disappear, not just the airway bill.
Well, let's talk about the disruptors. That's a big issue and challenge for the traditional cargo industry. How challenging are these guys? Are the Amazons and Alibabas of this world for the traditional air freight business?
I think the Amazons are looking at things on an end-to-end basis, and they're focusing on the end consumer, which is you and I. We're the consumers. And when we buy things online, we have an expectation that we're going to get the delivery when we want it, where we want it, how we want it. How we're buying, the process of buying is moved online. I don't think anybody wants to go back to having to do their banking by queuing at banks and taking time over lunch to try and sit down and work through all their bills and things like that. It's all so easy online. And I think that's the area of the technology that we need to start embracing. And traditionally, airlines and forwarders have been slow enough to embrace that consumer end technology. And I think there's some opportunities there. The supply chain is as strong as its weakest link. And if we can focus on those areas and the areas of connectivity, that's where we'll find the areas where we can tighten things up and strengthen our value offering to the consumers and to the shippers, because and it's listening to what they really want. I think we need to adapt. We need to adapt maybe at a quicker pace than we have in the past. And I think there's opportunities there to do that.
Anne-Marie, thanks very much for talking to us from Cargo Forwarder Global at the Garden of Innovations set up by Jet Taylor, ULD manager Jet Taylor, at the Transport Logistics in Shanghai. Thanks a lot for your time.